Hey everybody, TacticAngel here, back for another premium ship review. Of course, we're talking about World of Warships Legends, and I'll be playing this on the PlayStation 4, as usual. The subject of today's video is this, the Tier 6 Imperial Japanese Navy destroyer, Asashio. As usual, I'll start with a little bit of history, move into analysis, we'll talk a little bit about commanders, stats, and finally finish off with some gameplay. If you want to skip any part of this, I've left a link down in the description for you. The Asashio was the first ship of its class of 10 destroyers built for the Imperial Japanese Navy. Laid down in September of 1935, completed in December 1936, and then launched in 1937, her name translates to Morning Tide. The Asashio class of destroyers were the first destroyers built after the Japanese decided to abandon their admittedly half-hearted attempts to design ships within the limitations of the Washington Naval Treaty. Previous destroyers built within the treaty limits, those being the Hatsuharu and Shiratsuyu class destroyers, while powerful ships in their own right, had a disappointing range and poor seakeeping characteristics. The new Asashio class, by virtue of being significantly heavier and 30 feet longer, was capable of longer range operations and was pleasantly less eager to roll over and kill its entire crew, the former being more suited to the role it was designed to do, and the latter being just a generally desirable characteristic of any ship. Since the Asashio was designed to be a fleet escort destroyer, it should be no surprise that this is exactly the way that it started service, escorting Admiral Kondo's fleet in support of the invasion of Malaya and the Philippines. She participated in the Battle of Bedong Strait, at this point escorting transport ships when she came under attack by Allied forces. During the engagement, she scored a hit on Royal Netherlands Navy destroyer Piet Hein, and then engaged in a gun duel with HNLMS Tromp and USS Stuart, a Clemson-class cruiser. She took returning fire, which forced her to disengage, and damaged, she returned to port for repairs. She was back in action by the time that the combined fleet sailed for Midway, though, this time escorting Admiral Kurita's supporting fleet. This would be her first serious run-in with American aircraft, where she suffered a hit by a 500-pound bomb, and so she was sent back to dock for more repairs. By the end of October 1942, though, she was back to her old escort and troop transport assignments, including one escort mission where she had another encounter with American aircraft, this time sustaining only light damage from a near miss to her bow. The third time marked the charm, though, but not so much for the Asashio herself, when she participated in the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. After weathering an initial attack, she began rescue operations for survivors of the Arashio, one of her sister ships, and the Nojima Maru, a coal ship / troop transport, which must have been lovely, she had been escorting. A second wave of American attack aircraft attacked later in that day, fatally wounding the Asashio. Survivors related that her captain, Sato Yasuro, chose to go down with the division he had sworn to protect, and was considered at the time a hero by his Japanese countrymen. In total, there were 10 ships in the Asashio class, none of which would survive to the end of the war, with another 3 being sunk by aircraft carriers, 4 by American submarines, and the remaining 2 by the incredibly numerous and capable Fletcher-class destroyers of the U.S. Navy, a fate which many players of the Asashio will quickly become familiar with in the game. So my opinion of the Asashio is that it's kind of a one-trick pony, and there's no doubt that this is a really neat trick, but it pays a pretty significant price to have this trick. Overall, people will want to compare this to the Akatsuki, and I'm going to do the very same thing in just a minute. And overall, I think it's safe to say that the Asashio is an inferior ship to the Akatsuki in most respects. The reason you might want to get the Asashio is because, of course, you get the premium camouflage on it. It is a quite fetching and Even though I can't find an Asashio class ship with this exact paint scheme on it, it's similar to historic Japanese camouflages of the time, so it looks rather authentic. The other, more practical reason is because it has a unique torpedo reload booster. Essentially, you trade the overall usefulness of your ship for this ability that you can throw out there in a pinch, which allows you to do some pretty awful things to the enemy, essentially reloading your torpedoes in less than 10 seconds. Other than this 10-second window, you're better off with an Akatsuki, but maybe that 10 seconds is all you need. So, as you're heading into the second half of the Jean Var campaign, is it worth it? I can't really give you a hard up or down. I didn't really sense that there was anything terribly wrong with this ship, but I did definitely lose the majority of the games that I played in it, so I question its overall carry potential and whether you're paying too much for this torpedo reload gimmick. Now, admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of Japanese destroyers, but I imagine in the future I will be playing a lot more of the Kid or the Błyskawica than this ship when I want to get my premium Tier 6 destroyer games in. Now, after that especially unhelpful suggestion, let's talk about commanders. I'm going to talk really about two of them, and you have at least one of them already. Raizo Tanaka is probably the obvious choice since the Asashio is absolutely a torpedo boat and he is the Japanese torpedo destroyer commander, so you might say he's the obvious choice here. On the screen you can see the setup that I use in this ship, though you can probably get away with making a couple revisions to this. The other choice here is Togo Haihachiro, who, by virtue of being the base commander, has access to Fully Packed. Though Fully Packed does give you a third smoke and engine boost charge, which could be useful, the reason people are going to want to consider this is probably more to do with the fact it will give you a second charge of the torpedo reload booster. Ordinarily, you just get one. The thing about this booster is that it comes with a 6-minute reload charge though, but both the base trait for Togo and a highly leveled Fully Packed will reduce this by as much as 30 seconds. Now, I don't know how big of a difference 5.5 minutes is versus 6 minutes, but this is a thing, and if you went out there with this kind of setup, I imagine what you'd be looking to do is shoot a load of torpedoes early in the game to try to get ahead, and then have a second reload ready for late in the game when you might need to carry. Now, obviously, this one's up to you, but Raizo Tanaka is probably the safer bet. As we run down all of the stats, I'll be comparing this ship to the Tier 6 Tech Tree Destroyer Akatsuki. Since Raizo Tanaka is probably the obvious choice for this ship, all stats I am comparing are modified by the same commander and camouflage values that you can see on the screen. In terms of survivability, the Asashio comes with my configuration with 14,340 hit points. It's armored between 13 and 20 millimeters, which isn't much, but it is actually a little bit better than the Akatsuki. What this means is essentially you'll be able to bounce the odd secondary AP shot, and if there are any destroyers running around there with AP loaded, maybe even them too. This is actually a little bit better than the Akatsuki, which measures in at around 2,000 less hit points. Now, this is not a trend that's going to continue, so eat it up while you can. As we move into artillery, both of these ships are armed with 3 turrets, mounting 127mm guns, 2 in each turret. They shoot out to 10.4 kilometers, and the Asashio reloads every 8.8 seconds. The turret rotation is a very sluggish 30 seconds, and it will do 1800 damage with HE with a 7% fire chance. I wouldn't really suggest shooting AP at too much in this ship, or really trying to shoot too much in this ship unless you have no better choice. How this measures up against the Akatsuki, which is by no means a really good gunboat, is it shoots a shell around 1/2 a second slower, and its turret rotation takes nearly twice as long as the Akatsuki, which has a 16.4 second 180 degree turning circle with the same sort of loadout. And this is actually one of the larger issues with the Asashio, and that is that there's really not very many ships that you can face that you are going to be able to outgun. For torpedoes, you are looking at 2x4 610mm torpedoes. They shoot out to 10 kilometers. At 66 knots, they're pretty fast, but they reload at 84.8 seconds. Now, they do a little bit more damage than you'd see on the Akatsuki, around 350 to be precise, but you have one less torpedo, and they reload 21 seconds slower than on the Akatsuki. Overall, this means the Akatsuki actually rates higher in terms of its torpedoes than the Asashio, but once again, you do get that torpedo reload boost consumable, which allows you to, at least once per game, reload your torpedo tubes in around 10 seconds. Now that can go a long way to making up some of this difference, but that's kind of a maybe or a maybe not. As we go into AA, the Asashio is really pretty pathetic when it comes to AA, scoring in with less than 1/3 of the AA rating of the Akatsuki, and is yet another time when we say, thankfully, this stat doesn't matter. In terms of maneuverability, the Asashio maxes out at 37.5 knots and has a turning radius of 640 meters. Its rudder shift is a respectable 3.6 seconds, and then if you were to compare this to the Akatsuki, it is equal to or worse in every regard here. Actually, the Asashio with its engine boost is still slower than the Akatsuki with a similar loadout, and has a slightly slower rudder shift to boot. When we look at concealment, these ships are basically exactly the same. With this particular setup, you're looking at 5 kilometer detectability, which is actually pretty disgusting, and the rest of these values are somewhat better than that. So, like most Japanese torpedo boats, if you're not running around shooting your guns, you're going to be pretty stealthy. Alright, so here we are, we're going to be on Haven. Obviously, I will be in the Asashio. There we just get a nice little look at the ship. I actually do like this camouflage. For once, it isn't green. And as I've hit on this before, I don't love the color green. So maybe that is poisoning my opinion of the ship. In any case, we're trying to give it a fair review. We are on the west side of the map. We got three ships over here. It seems like the spawns haven't changed too much, but everybody seems to be going south these days. We're going south too, so nothing to complain about there. Moving over towards that island, hoping to get some spots in, hoping to allow my teammates to start to whittle down these enemy targets. Now, I don't want to get too terribly close to that island because people have been known to blind fire at that corner. I have certainly done so every so often, and it's always embarrassing to be the first person to get killed before you've even seen somebody on the enemy team. Now, we have at least taken that off the table by spotting somebody, but it doesn't look like we have a ton of movement over here just yet. We have an Eisenhower and that Scharnhorst. They are both kind of moving in this direction. I am going to start to line up some shots here. I'm going to put some out in front of the Scharnhorst first. At this point, I use immediately that torpedo reload. Now, this is, in my opinion, one of the things that is not a bad idea with the torpedo reload. Unfortunately, the Gneisenau takes a sharp turn as I'm considering lining up just this unholy swarm of torpedoes. Now, as you can guess, if you actually did shoot that into maybe a bunch of enemies that weren't actively dodging, changing their speed, changing their heading. That's just a ridiculous amount of death that you can throw out there. I have certainly hit several things, and I don't want to give you the impression that I hit a lot of things very often. But here we see, even without a real successful use of that strategy, we have managed to earn 3 hits, and we're already up to 41,000 damage. Now there is some flooding going on in at least one of those ships. I'm not sure what is going on there. Kind of wondering if I know somebody. Is that their weird way of saying hello, or do they get confused? Are they colorblind? There are colorblind settings. It's hard to say. So, looking over there at the Scharnhorst. Scharnhorst isn't a ship I want to shoot at, and for that matter, neither is the Gneisenau, because these are ships that can definitely dodge. What I'm doing right now is using my superior spotting distance to keep that Benson in visual contact. I'm just stalking him. This is a good thing for the people behind me because, of course, if they land some shots on him, that's great stuff. We seem to be having a little bit of trouble with that, but he's swerving all over the place, so hard to really say. Looks like that Gneisenau may be moving up. We're going to put our torpedoes out there to see if we can't actually hit him. And at that point, the Benson's smokescreen has run out. It looks like he's still not interested in being over here. I don't really blame him. Plus, we have a battleship that's kind of charging right down the middle of that southern flank, which is, let's just say it's a low percentage maneuver. You don't get a lot of success. We're following those last couple of torpedoes in. We finish off that Gneisenau, so that's pretty good. Now, we have run out of real estate here between the island and that Benson's spotting distance, and honestly, we've really screwed the pooch here, because that Moss is also going to be able to shoot at us in a second. I start shooting over there because I really don't have any other choice, and I mean, fighting an American ship is like a super bad feeling. I'm gonna put some just desperation out there, turn my ship away, activate that smoke screen. We do manage to hit that Benson with a torpedo. Somewhere in the heat of it, I seem to have switched over to AP, which is not good, not useful. In any case, we kind of like our smoke screen, and we're going to sit here for a second. I think that Gaeta is probably going to try to sneak up on me, and in that case, I want to be able to use my turrets to, add some damage. That doesn't really work. And as you can see there, even as I was trying to turn my turrets to face him, they are really quite slow. It's actually really easy to outturn your turrets in this ship. Since we have a few more seconds in the smoke screen, we'll take some free damage on that York. You never know how this is going to shake out. Every little bit counts. And now we're looking at that Jean Bar, hoping that he moves up on us. We're not doing real good, but if he's moving forward, and particularly sort of broadside, maybe we'll get some lucky shots into him. Now, York looks like he wants to shoot the gap. We're going to we're just going to play those odds. So we have a little bit of overlap there with the torpedoes. We don't really need it. at this sort of range. And honestly, it's kind of hard to say whether or not that's even going to be necessary. But we're using preset number 2. We're going to just see how those are doing. Looks like doing pretty well. That's the shell follow view. You can only use it on preset 1 or 2. Sorry for those of you who have heard me say that 100,000 times. But I get tired of typing it a little bit. Not that I don't appreciate the question. I just get, how do you do that? Preset 2. In any case, things are looking pretty okay for our team. I know you were thinking I was going to hit that island, but I saw it coming. We're up 5 ships to 3, and at this point what we want to do as a destroyer, even though we don't have a ton of hit points, is kind of get out there, make sure we always have eyes on the enemy. At this point, it's actually hard to tell whether or not that last DD is actually playing. He's either doing a really good job or he's AFK in the back, because nobody's seen him yet. So as we start to move up the middle, we do see that there is another destroyer on our team, and he is also moving up. Considering I only have 1,200 hit points, that's some good moral support. And just ever so slowly getting my turrets into position. I do wonder actually what his situation is. So I do look back here and just see, is he doing better? I mean, he's doing better, but it's hard to do a lot worse than this. I mean, I might tell you that I'm fine, but it hurts. It hurts a lot. Now, when you get into this situation, obviously I spent my torpedo reload right at the beginning. That does limit your options later in the game. But, if you can get out front on the damage, that's pretty useful. I'm going to go ahead and bet that Jean Bar barrels straight down the middle, in which case I should have a pretty good game. Slowly watching. I'm really not feeling great about that Akatsuki, but I mean, I was really hoping that he was AFK. Because, I could use the win. That Jean Bar dodges, either by chance or because he saw them. I don't think he did. They only have, I think, back in the stats, it was like 1.3, 1.6 sort of visibility range. A little bit better than the Akatsuki, actually, but not a whole lot. I'm not going to call that a major win for this ship. I'm just trying to annoy that Jean Bar, hopefully keep him on fire. Now, of course, we are slowly ticking down. We don't want to be too brave here because, of course, we are carrying points for our team, and if we do get ourselves killed, then that's not going to help anybody. Waiting for that island to get out of the way. Unfortunately, as I start to shoot this, it looks like the Jean Bar is turning to get out of the way already, which is kind of a bummer. I'm going to put this out there because I expect him to have to turn back. I expected him to turn a little bit more to his starboard and then turn back towards port. There's not a lot of sense in me just holding on to torpedoes because they don't do me any good, and unlike actual World War II destroyers, I carry plenty of spares. Now, we have noticed, disappointingly so, that we have clearly missed. We're not the only person putting lots of angry metal fish out there, though. Jervis manages to hit him several times, finishes off the Jean Bar, and I can't completely explain what's happened here, but clearly everybody on my team died. So we're left with a minute left. Obviously, this is not going to pan out because we're not going to kill Turpits with that much health. So, Asashio. I can start saying things a little bit earlier. This game is actually fairly indicative of my experience with it. For some reason, it just doesn't all come together. I think having the extra torpedo turret on the Akatsuki helps quite a bit. Even though you only have one more torpedo tube, you can distribute torpedoes a little bit differently. I think that makes it a definitely stronger ship, on top of the lower reload for both the guns and the torpedoes, the faster speed. Even having less hit points is not really a big loss for the Akatsuki. It is a tremendous little ship, which is why they have already nerfed it once. But Asashio doesn't benefit from all of that. I hope you can see it's not a terribly incapable ship. You drop a lot of games in it, I think. There you see us on the top of the charts. I feel like we did our part. Even on a loss, you can see the kind of credits you will earn with this kind of game. If you don't have a premium account, or if you don't like to put credit boosters on your boat, you can see exactly how much you would get there. In any case, I hope this has been informative for you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.